Many Westerners, in order to gain a deeper understanding about reincarnation, are turning to the original sources of knowledge about past and future lives. Among all available literatures, the Sanskrit Vedas of India are the oldest on earth and present the most comprehensive and logical explanations of the science of reincarnation, teachings that have maintained their viability and universal appeal for more than 5,000 years. The most fundamental information about reincarnation appears in the I'll just say the Gita, okay? The essence of Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads. Sorry about that. The Gita was spoken 50 centuries ago by Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to his friend and disciple Arjuna on a battlefield in northern India. A battlefield is the perfect place for a discussion about reincarnation, for in combat, men directly confront the fateful questions of life, death, and the afterlife. So in a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna begins to speak on immortality. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. The Gita further instructs, know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. The soul. Okay, now I speak of not just the soul, but the spirit. The spirit is to the mind as the soul is to the body. And I will, in the near future, provide more information on this and more evidences to what can be considered as proofs of the scenarios of spirit and soul. But we're going to go ahead and just continue on with just the aspects of the soul. But remember that when it comes to me and my discussions, the soul is just half, because we have the spirit. So let's continue on. The soul. Here we speak of something so subtle that it is not immediately verifiable by the limited human mind and senses. Therefore, not everyone will be able to accept the existence of the soul. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some fear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. It is impossible to understand reincarnation unless one knows the difference between the actual self, the soul, and the body. Now, once again, I divide it up into four equal parts, just like 4 quarters to a dollar. The mind is to the spirit is to the mind as the soul is to the body. The Gita helps us to see the nature of the soul by the following example. As the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. Consciousness is concrete evidence of the presence of the soul within the body. On a cloudy day, the sun may not be visible, but we know it is there in the sky by the presence of sunlight. Similarly, we may not be able to directly perceive the soul, but we may conclude it is there by the presence of consciousness. In the absence of consciousness, the body is simply a lump of dead matter. Only the presence of consciousness makes this lump of dead matter breathe, speak, love, and fear. In essence, the body is a vehicle for the soul through which it may fulfill its myriad material desires. The Gita explains that the living entity within the body is seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The soul falsely identifies with the body, carrying its different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Just as an automobile cannot function without the presence of a driver, similarly, the material body cannot function without the presence of the soul. As one grows older, the distinction between the conscious self and the physical body becomes more obvious. With his lifetime, a person can observe that his body is constantly changing. It does not endure, and time proves the child ephemeral. The body comes into existence at a certain time, grows, matures, and produces byproducts, in other words, children, and gradually dwindles and dies. The physical body is thus unreal, for it will in due time disappear. Of the non-existence there is no endurance, but despite all the changes of the material body, consciousness, a symptom of the soul within, remains unchanged. There we may logically conclude that the consciousness possesses an innate quality of performance that enables it to survive the dissolution of the body. And once again, for the soul there is neither birth nor death. He is not slain when the body is slain. But if the soul is not slain when the body is slain, then what becomes of it? The answer is given in the Gita, is that the soul enters another body. This is reincarnation. This concept may be difficult for some people to accept, but it is a natural phenomenon. And the Gita gives logical examples to aid our understanding. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. In other words, man reincarnates even in the course of one lifetime. Any biologist will tell you that the body's cells are constantly dying and being replaced by new ones. In other words, each of us has a number of different bodies in this very life. The body of an adult is completely different from the body the same person had as an infant. Yet despite bodily changes, the person remains the same. Something similar happens at the time of death. The self undergoes a final change of body. The Gita says, as a person puts on new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Thus the soul remains entrapped in an endless cycle of births and deaths. Now get that. Entrapped. The soul remains entrapped. That is part of the time loop scenario. Over and over and over we go. For one who has taken his birth, death is certain. And one who is dead, birth is certain. According to the Vedas, there are 8,400,000 species of life, beginning with the microbes and amoebas, rising through the fish, plants, insects, reptiles, birds, and animals to the humans and demigods. According to their desires, the living entities perpetually take birth in these species. The mind is the mechanism that authorizes these transmigrations, propelling the soul to newer and newer bodies. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail in his next life. Everything we have thought and done during our life makes an impression on the mind, and the sum total of all these impressions influences our final thoughts at death. According to the quality of these thoughts, material nature awards us as a suitable body. Therefore, the type of body that we have now is the expression of our consciousness at the time of our last death. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Further, the path of reincarnation does not always lead uphill. The human life is not guaranteed with a human birth in his next life. For example, if one dies with the mentality of a dog, then he will, in his next life, receive the eyes, ears, nose, etc. of a dog, thus allowing him to enjoy canine pleasures. Lord Krishna confirms the fate of such an unfortunate soul, saying, when he dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. According to the Gita, humans who do not inquire about their non-physical higher nature are compelled by the laws of karma to continue in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, sometimes appearing as humans, sometimes as animals, and sometimes as plants or insects. Our existence in the material world is due to the multiple karmic reactions of this and previous lives, and the human body provides the only loophole through which the material conditioned soul can escape. By properly utilizing the human form, one can solve all the problems of life, birth, death, disease, and old age, and break the endless cycle of reincarnation. If, however, a soul having evolved to the human platform wastes his life by engaging only in activities for sense of pleasure, he can easily create sufficient karma in this present life to keep him entangled in the cycle of birth and death for thousands upon thousands of lives, and they may not all be human. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what kind of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained, get that? For one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all of this. This is the position that I am at currently. Alright? The endeavoring transcendentalist who is situated in self-realization can see all of this clearly, but those who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. A soul fortunate enough to obtain a human body should seriously endeavor for self-realization, to understand the principles of reincarnation, become free from repeated birth and death. We cannot afford not to. Now, in my next episode, I am going to go to the other side and see what an actual entity from the other side, and what they had to say about reincarnation and the levels of reincarnation. And I want to leave on this one last note, with this being Sunday, and with many of you being self-proclaimed Christians out there, and you believe in the stories of this book here, if you believe in Jesus, understand that you believe in reincarnation. On the first day, Jesus died on the cross. On the second day, he was groomed and prepared and buried within the tomb or cave or whatever you want to call it. On the third day, he arose again. If he left his body and returned into that body, and they knew him not, he was reincarnated. Okay? And which we also have in the book of John, the story to where Jesus speaks of John the Baptist and Elias. And in that context, it sure sounds like he is speaking of reincarnation. So even in Christianity and the Bible, there's a New Testament with Proverbs and Psalms, we have evidence of reincarnation through Jesus himself. Stay tuned for our next episode, and like I said, we'll find out what the other side has to say about reincarnation.